I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And I'm Jim. Happy day.
Oh no. Oh no.
They've got me already.
They've got him already. This is Inevitable, that podcast where we save our lives by turning the clocks ahead 5 minutes. Because this week we watched Full Circle.
Written by Jeremy Burnham and Trevor Ray.
Directed by Peter Graham Scott.
And aired on February 21st, 1977.
So we're being joined live by a happy person himself. Jim.
Hello.
Hello. First guest on Inevitable. Long-time guest on Zenith and Trust Your Doctor.
Yes, I follow you around like a loyal dog.
Luckily, our quote-unquote studio here that we're recording in is a bona fide and certified sanctuary, and we're protected.
Yes, unfortunately, unlike Jim's place, we are protected from the conversion process.
Yes, my serpent picture above the door fell off, and they got me.
Well, did you remember to sharpen your knives? That's the question. You remember to sharpen your knives?
I always have sharp knives.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, did I say that out loud?
No? What? I didn't hear anything. So this is the final episode of Season 2 of Inevitable, so we'll be talking both about Full Circle, the greatest Doctor Who story ever made, and
Introduction of Adric.
And about the entire season as a whole, so should be fun. This episode was noticeable for its lack of Adric, I will say. Although I do think Matthew is a suitable substitute. Weirdly enough,
to some extent, yeah, I would have to agree.
Bit harsh.
Isn't Adric played by...
He's clever, but not annoying. That's the difference.
This is true. He's clever and endearing, whereas Adric is just clever and irritating. And whatever the opposite of endearing is.
Yeah.
Wasn't Adric played by Matthew Waterhouse?
Yeah, Matthew Waterhouse himself.
A little weird.
There's a link there.
There's probably something deeper here.
I don't know about that.
Actually, I've got quite a lot to say about names at some point in this podcast.
Ooh.
So bear with me when it comes to it, because you might fall asleep.
I have a lot to say about time later on.
And I don't have really much to say at all, so, you know...
No.
It's
Nice.
I'm just here.
Thanks for coming, Keon.
Yeah, the viewers won't notice, but off-air, Keon was like, I might just fall asleep during this episode.
Yeah, the last few days have been a little hectic for me.
You hear some gentle snoring. It's not me or Dylan. Not that I want to point the finger at anyone else.
We're in it for the long haul, Jim and I. We're here till the end.
Yeah, let's do this.
Speaking of the end, we must start at the beginning, and by the beginning I mean
the end.
More rocks. As is usual, my first note for this week would be last time on Children of the Stones. Stones, as it is every week.
Right, so we sort of pick up where the last episode left off, which is that the circle of people / stones has surrounded Hendric's mansion, and Adam and Matthew are trapped inside.
This is the shortest recap, I think, this entire season.
But it's okay, because right away, Adam and Matthew sit down on the beds, and we're like, so, let's recap what we know.
Like I said, to start at the end, we must start at the beginning.
Info dump!
Right. So we are retold the information that the circle is aligned with a supernova that is now a black hole, and that black holes suck in everything, including light.
Right. It's a good recap.
Matthew also reiterates that Hendrik might be harnessing the power of the black hole to brainwash people, and that Hendrik is probably repeating the events of thousands of years ago.
And is probably some sort of high priest or something.
Right. So I think this episode sort of leaves room for interpretation, especially at the end. But my sort of interpretation here is that Hendrik was all a part of this loop as well, right? He wasn't sort of an outside perpetrator. He was fulfilling this role of this high priest who was doing this sinister thing thousands of years ago.
Yeah, he's the original druid, isn't he? I think.
Right, and then we see at the end Joshua Litton come and fill that role when the loop resets itself.
That's why he gets so worked up, doesn't he? When Adam says something disparaging about the original person who saw the not the black hole, was it Shooting Star, the visitor, or whatever it's called, the guest star. He makes a kind of disparaging joke about it, and Hendrik is not at all happy about it, because that's basically him who's taking the mick out of, I think.
Yeah, he's like, "You what, mate? You want to fight?"
Fight me IRL.
Let's take this outside.
Let's take this into my stone circle, my inner sanctum.
So there's a little tidbit here that I thought was actually interesting, and let me know what you guys think, because this might just be my own interpretation. The ancient priest, I thought, was originally extracting power from the star in order to provide something benevolent or whatever for the people. But then when the supernova happened and the star turned into a black hole, that process was then reversed, right? He was extracting something good from the people of the community and giving it to the black hole, or whatever sinister god or force was controlling the black hole.
Yeah, I think there's a line, isn't there, about it flipping, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It flips from one to the other. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, you might say.
That sounds weirdly familiar.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember that line. I had the same interpretation, that it was like when it became a black hole, everything became evil.
Right.
And along those lines, they're kind of like, well, Hendrik has to know exactly when the black hole is going to appear in the sky, which is why he's got these digital clocks all around the house. And then Adam's like, digital clocks are not accurate enough. Like, quartz is not going to be that accurate. And Matthew's like, well, what about an atomic clock? Matthew's like, you're right, an atomic clock. Now that would do it.
So that's how they sort of deduce, right, that they're all hooked up to this atomic clock.
And they use ammonia, don't they? Which is what he smelt when he was under the church and found all those computers.
Yeah. Right. The atomic clock is ammonium powered, which I didn't know you could have atomic clocks powered by ammonia. I always thought they were like controlled by radioactive decay of. I'm forgetting the element now. Californium, maybe.
Well, Adam has this line about how ammonia never changes, or something like that.
Of course, things might have changed since 1976 for this film. I hope they've changed since.
Yeah, ammonia is the state-of-the-art timekeeping mechanism that we have nowadays. I don't know.
Well, thing is, when I first watched this show, 2 years ago-ish, I remember, and I don't know why, but I remember, I was like, oh my God, an atomic clock. Like, that's so amazing. They're all being controlled by this atomic clock. And I just thought it was like the most cool thing in the world. And on this rewatch, I was like, okay, all right.
You weren't shocked.
You've changed.
At how high tech it is.
I mean, yeah, I think just sort of looking back, I don't even remember why I was so amazed by this reveal that it was an atomic clock controlling all the digital clocks. But I was.
Well, you won't be as amazed again, will you?
No,
because
no.
you already know it.
Yeah, of course.
But you might be less amazed by atomic clocks by now, of course, because time moves on, and so does technology.
Maybe so, yeah.
So I was just looking up what they use in atomic clocks now. They use rubidium, apparently.
Ah.
Huh.
Interesting.
Is that one of those new elements that's sort of at the end of the table?
No, rubidium is somewhere in the 80s, I think.
Huh.
The second, the unit of time, the second is actually defined by the decay oscillation of a cesium atom. That's how it's defined.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, seconds existed before anyone like even knew what that was, right? So how does that work? They just like
Because I guess the decay of the cesium
like-
atom is like extremely close to what used to be 1 second, and then they just basically made that the defining
Standard.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really interesting.
the defining unit of 1 second. It's just like how they have the standard kilogram somewhere in Europe, which is like a block of metal designed to be exactly
guys.
one
This is
kilogram.
Under normal gravitic conditions or something. Isn't it? Yes. Of course, the second is based on a rel, isn't it?
Yes.
If you go really far back.
As we all know, the
In the
Daleks were
60s.
here before us.
Eric von Däniken.
Well, so Matt and Adam come up with this plan to change the clocks around so that they are brought into Hendrik's dining room at a time that's sort of off when the black hole appears.
Basically invent daylight savings times to save themselves. And they hack into the mainframe by just kind of
just
opening,
hidden behind a little cabinet.
just hidden behind the couch in the room. They're in. And they turn a couple dials, and then like the clock starts speeding up.
Well, okay, let's not gloss over the tense scene where they have to go and get all their luggage. So they run downstairs real quick and then get it and run back up.
And no one's there, so it isn't really that tense.
Yes, that thrilling scene where they're running from
No one.
no one.
But someone might have come along, but they didn't.
They were all too busy standing in a circle.
Yeah, there weren't many people left by then. Did you notice a couple of terrible moments of comedy in this sort of sequence? There's a bit where Matt, where Adam's trying to work something out, and Matt puts on this offensive Chinese accent and says, "Aged brain grinds exceeding slow." Did you notice that?
Oh, yes.
I did not notice that whatsoever.
I did notice that, and I was like, what did he just say?
Wow.
What?
Now, that might have meant something in 1976, or 77 when it was aired, but 76 when it was filmed. I don't know. It sounds like it might be something that Charlie Chan or someone might have said back in those old films. But this is the thing about, if you're middle-aged and you write something for kids to say, their reference points are not the same as yours. And I think this might be a problem because the actor looks just slightly uncomfortable doing it and probably doesn't understand why he's doing it. And when you watch it, you don't really understand why he's doing it either. That's a bit clunky. And the other thing was he makes that joke about in Gaelic, the word for bear is math.
Oh, yeah.
And they're doing some mathematics. And Gareth Thomas completely ignores him when he makes that joke. So there's a couple of really clunky moments there. So very odd.
The thing about that one is that when Matthew delivers it, his back is to Adam, and he's like, it's not really clear who he's saying it to. He kind of goes, "Hey, did you know?" Like almost fourth wall breaking. Like, "Hey, did you at home? Did you know that bear use means maths?"
Hey, kids.
It's Dora the Explorer. What does bear mean in Gaelic?
Can we use the Gaelic word for bear to cross the bridge? No, okay. Sorry. Yeah, it was all just sort of very, awkward. I mean, I didn't even notice the sort of, vaguely racist line there that you brought up, but all of it was sort of just kind of clunky and awkward, and yeah.
There's a lot of exposition, but I think mostly it kind of works because they both seem. But the good thing about this whole thing is that it's not the adult who works everything out, is it? Mm-hmm. In fact, most of the stuff is worked out by Matt during this, isn't it? So it's a good to and fro between the two of them during this, and they both kind of seem to fire off each other. And I think the actors do that quite well, but they're given a couple of lines that just are never going to work, unfortunately. But I think the rest of that scene, considering it's so exposition heavy, I think actually works quite well.
Yeah, I think it works well, subject to the affable charm that the Children of the Stones has displayed for its entire 7-episode run. Its affable, low-budget charm.
Yes.
I mean, that is something to be said, I think, about the show, is that there is, even this sort of moment of peril, right, when they're about to be destroyed, and they have, 55 minutes to get out of the situation. There's sort of this quirkiness all throughout that's just always sort of there.
Yeah, it's good.
So they're brought to Hendrix's little brainwashing chamber.
And then Adam's like, Matt's so smart, he knows what you're going to say before you even say it. And Hendrix's like, oh, really? What am I going to say and do then? And then Matt just narrates the events of what's about to happen. Matt preempts the next 5 minutes of suspense by telling us what's going to happen. He's like, you're going to sit down. You're going to have us sit down. You're going to tell us that this table is a conduit for channeling the energy from the black hole. Then you're going to convert us into happy people. And Hendrix's like, we'll see. Sit down.
Yeah, you got lucky. You couldn't have known that.
Sweating, pulling in his collar. No.
Why would you say that?
Quick, Link, change all the plans immediately.
Adam tells Matthew so surreptitiously across the table not to drink whatever's in the goblet that they're holding.
Well, there's so much conspicuous signaling between them of Matt is about to drink the water or liquid or whatever, and Adam just shakes his head no, and then later when they wink at each other and they're like, "Yep, we made it through."
Okay, Dad, I won't drink it.
Hendrix's like, what? What did you say? What?
Nothing. But they do, at least when they wink later on, they do it from not Hendrix's side, don't they? I think that's something. Yeah, they both, yeah. Well, I won't go into the logistics.
The logistics of winking.
They wink at the side that he can't see past their noses, presumably. So some thought has been put into the direction of this.
Better than no thought at all, which is
exactly
almost what I would expect if I'm going to be brutally honest.
Really, I mean, overall, I think, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but I loved this episode. I think this was great. Best episode of the show, in my opinion. Yeah,
I think it ends on a high, doesn't it?
I do think it ends on a high. Still think the show is just kind of all right in my book.
Huh. Well, we'll have to
what?
Get there.
As is usual, I'm in the minority.
Right, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. I'm going now.
Jim just bails.
Jim was like, I was misinformed about what this podcast was going to be about.
I thought you were going to like it. That's why I came on board. Sorry, carry on.
The deadpan delivery is what sells it. So Hendrix says this weird prayer. He's like, I call down the spirits. And then Matt and Adam, they get up and they're like, yes, we're happy people now. Yes, yes. Hendrix once you join the circle, your transformation will be complete.
So they go do that.
I always think it's risky when characters have to pretend they're under some sort of influence. Because Hendrik will have seen so many people having undergone this transformation that you've got to get it right, or he's going to say, that's not what people normally do.
Yeah, I was thinking that during the scene. Sorry,
but Matt has at least used his kind of psychic, what did he call it, psychic camera, did he?
Psychometry.
Yeah, he used his psychometry to kind of peek in and what was happening when Margaret and Sandra were undergoing the same thing. So presumably, he lost contact with them, so he doesn't know how they acted after they were taken over. So they're just guessing here, aren't they?
Right, I was thinking that. They don't really know how they're supposed to act while they're getting taken over or post being taken over.
Well, I would guess their interactions with all of the, happy people in the village kind of informed what they do here. But yeah, it is sort of the case where you're like, okay, how do you know, right post transformation, right off the bat?
Just after the transformation. Now, they've seen them, a long time after the transformation. But yeah, what happens just after? You got to you got to stick your neck out and go for it, and just hope that it seems okay, and it seems to work, doesn't it?
I can suspend my disbelief for this though, because it's not like
it's not a problem. No.
Well, I mean, thing is, at the end of this, we sort of find out, or it's heavily implied, that Adam and Matt are just also reenacting this sort of ancient thing, right? So they'd almost had to have, been successful at this.
Yeah,
it depends on your point of view. I think of the
nature of
the ending. I think how you interpret the ending.
Indeed.
So they go and join the circle, and in so doing, break the psychic control over everyone else.
And then Link comes in because Hendrik is like passed out, and he's like, "Hendrik, the circle has been broken!" But he's too late, because at that exact moment we see a white marker streak across the screen. And Hendrik is aged horribly to his true age before collapsing on the table and dying, presumably.
Was that what it was? Was that him sort of reassuming his thousands of years old age, or was that him reassuming the form of the ancient priest?
That's what I thought, that it was the latter. Yeah, I thought he became the original sort of character in this cycle.
When I
of the original druid.
Yeah, I thought it was the other. I thought it was him resuming his original age. The way I interpreted this whole episode implied that all these people are the same people who've been doing this over and over again, and they're trapped in this hellscape. Not that it's passed down through generations. So that's what I'm saying. That the whole thing about Matthew and Adam heavily depends on your interpretation.
Yeah. Thing is, in episode 6, Adam has this sort of ambiguous line where he says that he hints that the time loop but also says that it's been running adjacent to the normal flow of history. So they've obviously, advanced in their technology and whatnot, but have been in this loop. So, and yeah, I think you are right. It is the same group of people. But yeah, I don't know. I really just don't know.
Well, I mean, you have to get into, you have to start thinking about reproduction, don't you? At some point, if it's going down from generation to generation. Obviously, it's quite a limited gene pool in our village.
Yeah,
so they kind of have to be the same people, don't they, rather than generations on from the original people, don't they?
Right.
But this is fiction, so I don't know. Maybe genealogy works differently, like in this town. Who knows?
Well, it does in a lot of the West Country in England.
Wow.
You can cut that if you don't want to be sued.
Sued for all $0 we'll be making on this podcast.
You said it, man. Wasn't us.
This is where I have to slap it. The views of Jim don't represent the views of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm right under the bus. I can see that now. Never mind. I live in the West Country, I should say. Actually, I live about 30-minute drive from Avebury, where all this was filmed.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, we might talk about that a bit later.
Okay.
But on with the story.
Onward to adventure. Because then Adam and Matthew, they kind of pass out.
Well, they look back. Everyone in the circle looks back, because the thing is, when they were being controlled, they were all looking away from Hendrik's house. But upon, the control breaking, they all look towards the light, which apparently turns them to stone. Adam and Matt are sort of Orpheus-like, or sorry, everyone else is sort of Orpheus-like, and at the very end, they look back and ruins the day, but ruins their day, ruins their life, turns them to stone. But Adam and Matt sort of don't look...
Ruins their cycle.
Right.
A bit like Di did earlier on in the story.
Yeah.
Ruined Matt's cycle, didn't he? Sorry, carry on.
And like the two people in the painting, Adam and Matt are the only ones to escape.
Only for them to pass out and wake up. No.
In the sanctuary.
Yeah, in sanctuary. Where Di is alive.
But is it Die? Is he he's a different person. He's a different version of Die.
He's died.
He's the undied.
3.
Died.
Yeah. Died and now he's back.
I
He's
once
smarter,
was
isn't
dead,
he?
but I'm now I'm alive.
He's tidier. He's got a cravat and all sorts, hasn't he?
He's no longer sort of the vagabond he was before, but he apparently runs a business. What was it?
It's a knife sharpening business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's got one of those little sort of pedal knife sharpener things, isn't he? Which apparently has been passed down from generations, isn't it, from his father and his father before him. So as far as this Die is concerned, he's never been a poacher, and nor is his forefathers. So this is a completely different Die, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Still operating out of the sanctuary, you rent free, I guess. So good for
low overheads. It's good. It's a good business model. I might take it myself. Find a cave, get a knife sharpener. It's a whole new future opens up.
Sharpening knives in caves.
Living my best life.
Following your dreams.
Don't let anyone take them away from you. If you want to sharpen knives in a cave, don't let anyone stop you. That's what I say. It worked for me.
Jim's recording this as we speak from his knife sharpening cave.
There's pretty good Wi-Fi, actually, to be fair.
Is it pedal powered like your knife sharpener? Throughout this entire episode, you're just constantly pressing on the Wi-Fi power pedal.
I don't get any emails if I fall asleep.
On a stage,
Jim is downside.
Little do we know, Jim is on a stationary bike as we speak.
I can't stop or I'll lose contact with him. If you hear me panting later, it's not out of excitement.
So they kind of leave Die's place and they run up this hill and Matt's like, the town looks different. And I'm like, yes, it does. It's different.
Yeah, but does it though? It looks like a painting of the town. Could you work out what was different with it? Apart from it looked like a painting on the photograph.
No idea what was different. I was like, what is different?
Well, I took a screenshot of it and had it to one side, and I was trying to find an establishing shot of the village from that angle, and I couldn't find one, so I couldn't really make a comparison to see what was supposed to be different.
So that's what's different. It's just a different angle. Matt's like,
I've never seen Milbury from this angle before.
Matt's all, it's different, and Adam slaps him over the head, and he's like, we're looking at it from the other side, Matt.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, just throw in some, loving, quote-unquote, parental violence here at the end. Just
It's the 70s. That's how it worked back then. A loving slap round their head.
Just a little love tap.
Yeah, tough love.
Well, they then head into town and find Margaret. Well, they also find Mrs. What's-her-name, who I never learned her name. Crabtree. And she's like, don't worry, Margaret. They've arrived. You can put that phone down. It's all good. And Margaret's like, we thought you had left already, but you left the car and all your luggage and everything. We didn't know where you were. And they're like, we didn't know where we were either. We don't know what just happened. We might be tripping right now.
Because Margaret's got different hair, so things have changed. Mrs. Crabtree looks a bit smarter as well, doesn't she? Got some makeup on.
Everybody looks like they suddenly put more effort into their appearance.
Well, it's the end of the series. They push the bow out at the end.
Yeah, I guess Sandra couldn't come back for this episode because then Margaret's like, Sandra's going to be so sad she missed you, Matt. And I'm like, but is there a reason why they couldn't just put Sandra in the episode to say goodbye to Matt?
She was in the episode, just not in this scene. We see her in the circle.
That's odd, isn't it? Because I mean, I know roughly how the BBC operated back then because of sort of studying Doctor Who carefully, but I assume it's the same with ITV or HTV who did this back then. Is that you get paid per episode, not necessarily. It's not kind of commensurate to how much you're in that episode necessarily, but if you're in it, you get paid. If you're not in it, you don't get paid. But she's in it, as you say, from a filmed insert, which they probably did first because they tend to do. But, there's no reason she shouldn't be there unless the actress was not available for some reason. Because that would have been filmed in the Bristol studios quite a long time after the exterior filming was done. Mm-hmm. So it might just be she wasn't available, so they just wrote in a line. But there's that terrible, clunky attempted joke from Adam, isn't there? But she'll be furious to have missed you, Matthew, because you were the brightest one in the class. And what's he said? It's something like, it can't be much of a class. Or,
he says
the others must be very backward.
Yeah, very backward.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
And it's like a lead balloon, isn't it? Everyone just looks at each other. Hashtag orcs. It's terrible.
Well, he's kind of.
I'm not even. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say he's kind of just metaphorically backhanding Matthew right now.
Well, it's quite a British thing to be self-deprecating like that. But of course, if you say everyone else is backward, then that includes Sandra, doesn't it? So that's not necessarily going to go down with Margaret. I don't know if that's why she stares at him or not, but he realises he realises he's dropped a bollock, and then they kind of move on afterwards after an embarrassed silence.
That's kind of
I'm
like
not quite sure what they're driving at in the script. I'm not quite sure what they were aiming for, but it doesn't seem to work wherever it was.
Well, I think it's to show that everybody got smarter when they became happy people, which we had kind of seen indications of before when in the two scenes we saw the classroom actually appear in.
Well, because that might not be the case at this point.
Yeah, that's probably what is driving.
It might just be a normal school at this point, mightn't it? Because the Magus hasn't even turned up, because you see at the end of the episode he turns up, doesn't he? He's not even there yet, so it could just be a normal school, where everyone's sort of like the normal sort of variants of intelligence, and she just thinks, well, "What are you talking about?"
I do like how his joke sucks all the air out of the room, and then he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go now. Goodbye."
Mic drop. Adam's final Milbury mic drop.
You always leave them wanting less. It's the old showbiz adage, isn't it?
Season 2 Milbury mic drop.
So they leave. They get in their car and head on out.
There's this very tense scene where they're driving and they're looking at all the stones and they're holding their breath as they approach the line of stones, and then release as they drive through them. And then they just pull over on the side of the road and they're like, "Oh, thank God we made it through that."
I think I might have gone a bit further if I was them. Just to be sure.
I'm like, drive.
As soon as I was out of the circle, step on it.
The car starts to reverse and they get sucked back into the village.
Well, that's the thing here is why this is all so creepy, is that they're really just reenacting the events of the past as well, because the people in the painting we see escape from the circle. They themselves really had no other choice but to escape. And the sort of sinister thing in my eyes that happened is that they, Adam and Matt, were the ones who essentially turned everyone to stone by breaking the psychic connection.
But they'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got blood on their hands, or at least sort of stone dust.
Residue.
So
blood and stone.
So basically, one of those two in previous sort of incarnations must have painted the painting, mustn't he? One of the two escapees.
I would assume so. I mean, it would have to be someone who knew the events of the town but escaped, since everybody else would get turned to stone. Yeah. It's true. Good point.
I've been thinking too much about this.
Well, Adam and Matt do the exact opposite. They don't think very much about this at all. They just sort of look back and say, "Did that all happen?
Maybe.
Dunno."
Maybe. But then Matt's like, you know what though? I could really go for a sandwich. And Adam's like, you know it, boy. Do you want your favorite peanut butter, strawberry mousse? And I thought he said turkey, but
I thought he said gherkins.
Gherkins, yeah.
Gherkins makes it sound more disgusting. I'm going to be straight honest.
Well, that's the idea, I think, isn't it? It's a I think you might be pregnant, actually, Matt.
I was going to make the same joke.
Sorry. He's got some very weird cravings. Maybe that's the sequel.
Oh no. Oh no.
Matt somehow gives birth to a happy one.
Uh-oh. Children of the Stones.
Hey, that could work. Get on it. Get writing.
What was the sequel book to this called? I'm completely forgetting now.
I don't remember.
Children of the Stones. It wasn't like part 2. It had its own name. I completely forgot.
I'll look it up for you.
Return to the Stones, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was.
What it is.
I've heard it's not particularly good.
You would think that sort of thing would just be a cash grab that they did, 30 years later or whatever. But I read that they actually had that in the works since the 70s.
Oh, really? They just never got around to doing it?
Yeah.
I think it would be hilarious if they published a novelization of Children of the Stones, and then Return to the Stones, which is what it's actually called, was just a reprint of Children of the Stones. They just change all the names, and then it's just the exact same
the loop
book.
just again.
That would be superb. There's an audio book of the original Children of the Stones novel, and Gareth Thomas reads it. Unfortunately, it's Gareth Thomas. Unfortunately, he's dead now, isn't he? Gareth Thomas died a couple of years ago, I think. But as he got older, his voice went up a couple of octaves. Unfortunately, he's got a very sort of creaky old man's voice. So I'm slightly in two minds as whether to get this audiobook or not. But I'm quite keen on getting it, but it's slightly put me off. I might just get the book instead.
Hey, it might be really, really entertaining.
It might be, if you can get past the voice, which went from tenor to soprano at some point.
That's not a Big Finish production or anything like that, is it?
No, it's nothing to do with Big Finish. It's a particular one. It's on Audible, and probably elsewhere. But
gotcha.
I'm a member of Audible, so I might spend a credit on this.
Big Finish, the heroes that classic British science fiction needs but doesn't deserve.
True, actually.
That's a good strapline. I like it. They'll pay you for that, probably.
Well, I put it out into the world now for free.
Yeah, you should have got your people to talk to their people before you publicly announce it.
Oh, yes, my people.
I could have been working for Big Finish if
you had applied to that job that you didn't apply to.
Oh, there was a job coming up, was it?
Yeah, I was going to. There was a sort of I'm looking for a full-time job right now, and there's sort of a job that fit my skill set, let's say.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But no such luck.
It's quite a long commute.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of the episode.
And the end of the show.
We didn't mention.
Yeah, I was going to say
we didn't mention the end.
One final scene with
Joshua Litton.
Yeah. Not to be confused with Litton from Doctor Who.
But actually, in a way, I mean, if you remember back to Litton's theme from Doctor Who, there's sort of just this plotting, I don't know how you would describe it, song.
Light jazz?
Light jazz.
That plays when Joshua Litton arrives in town. And he's obviously the next sort of incarnation of the priest, of the druid. And he's welcomed by Link, who now sporting a nice mustache,
dark hair and a stash,
and he's sort of welcomed into the manor.
He thinks he's going to be very happy there. Now there's a key word.
Smash cut to
And so,
credits.
yes.
Sidney Sager's haunting music.
Haunting singing. Is the Ambrosia Singers or something, isn't it, who do this? Freaky as all heck.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, possibly watching this as a kid and just having that song and the images of the Stones. And people have attested to that online of like, this scarred me
For life. I mean, watching all those people turn to stone would definitely scar me for life.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm ancient enough to have watched at least some of this at the time. I'm not sure I saw all of it, but I was about 9 when it was shown. And there's various things that I remember. I remember the spooky beginning with the Stones. And I remember, do you have the phrase "finders keepers" in America?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we used to use, was it the dice to say, "It's mine. I found it. It came to me." We used to say that all the time instead of "finders keepers." Me and my brother. So we obviously both watched it, but I don't have a brilliant memory of watching it. The memory of watching this is not solid as watching Doctor Who at the same time. So I may not have seen every episode, but it's certainly. I remember it freaking me out.
And I'm curious. You might not remember, Jim, but do you know what time this aired?
It would have been sort of, I guess, about sort of 5 p.m. Something like that. It would have been probably the last. It would have been the independent channel, the ITV. It would have been probably the last thing on there before the news or that kind of stuff. So, it's a bit much, isn't it, for kids? I've got the DVD of this, and it's a certificate 12. The certification in this country, they advise you to be at least 12 before you watch this, which I think is probably fair. I watched it with my 9-year-old daughter the other day. We went through the whole lot. I mean, she did seem to lose a bit of interest, but I kept saying, "Do you want to watch something else?" She's saying, "No, let's carry on." So she was kind of watching it, but she was like whizzing up and down the living room. Do you have Heelys in America?
Yes.
It's like sneakers with wheels, and
yes.
She was whizzing up and down, kind of watching. The funniest thing though, when she was watching this, the really spooky theme. Mm-hmm. She kept singing the Simpsons theme along to it. Because you get that sort of choral bit, don't you? And then you get the Simpsons, which is a bit like what they're doing on this theme tune. So I can't really listen to this theme tune in the same way anymore. So I've got my daughter to thank for that. She's ruined it for me completely.
Well, now you can conduct an experiment to find out if your daughter's going to be scarred for life from watching.
Yes.
Children of the
monitor
Stones.
her psychologically.
If she gains a natural fear for the stone circle near your house, you'll know why.
Yeah, so
I might take her along there now and see what she thinks. She's been already, actually, but obviously before she saw this. But I'll take her again.
So
yes.
I mean, yeah. If you want to jump into it, like I'm actually really curious. So you actually live sort of in the vicinity.
Yeah, I've been in this area about 12 years, something like that. So yeah, I've been about half an hour away from Avebury since then. I didn't grow up here, but I'm here now. It does have an atmosphere, Avebury. If you go over there, I mean, this was filmed in 1976, which is like a freakishly hot summer in Britain. I mean, it's like hotter than in living memory. That kind of unexpected sort of heat wave. So on Children of the Stones, it looks a lot more sort of parched than it does normally. It's very, very green normally. So yeah, it looks like different if you go and visit there now. But all the stones are in place. The that sort of post office kind of local shop thing. That's a kind of tourist gift shop with loads of sort of spiritual books and Avery bookmarks and all sorts.
Trinkets.
Yeah, tat with Avery written on it. That kind of stuff. So yeah, it's if you're ever near, it's well worth a visit, and you can go to Avery and Stonehenge very easily in the same day. So they're not very far apart.
Well, if I ever go to Stonehenge, now I know where my side trip's going to be.
Yeah. But that's a weird thing about it, because HTV was a kind of Wales and Southwest England based sort of independent TV company. And they had a huge range. I mean, basically their sort of mission statement was to freak kids out in the early and mid 70s and actually into the 80s. So they did a bunch of really odd stuff. There's a program called Sky that they did, which is Stonehenge plays quite a big part in, which is the sort of like alien boy who lands on Earth. King of the Castle, which is some weird thing, like a boy who lives in a tower block, and he ends up in this strange world. It's like a parallel to the people he knows that live in this tower block. Both of those written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, the Bristol boys from Doctor Who.
Yeah, I've heard of the latter there. I've heard of King of the Castle. Sounds just wild, yeah.
Yeah, Sky's worth a look as well. The HTV did Into the Labyrinth, Arthur of the Britons, and Robin of Sherwood, which is perhaps the best Robin Hood series we've had in this country. So they were quite an odd outfit. They're being kind of subsumed by the rest of ITV now, but. Yeah, they did some weird stuff, but it's quite a mystic sort of place, Southwest England. So you've got Avery and Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain is not far away, and you've got Glastonbury Tor, where King Arthur is supposed to be buried and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of sort of weird stuff goes down around here. So HTV West, kind of make the most of that, and so they're sort of producing sort of folk horror for kids. It's like The Wicker Man or Village of the Damned for kids. This show, isn't it? Children of the Stones. It's very sort of weird, spiritual folk horror, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and this one sort of kind of, I've been kind of looking up some of these shows that they've done. A lot of the ones that you just mentioned, they all sort of do their own thing, right? There was one, I forget the name, but it like really heavily used gothic horror and like the tropes of that, and the qualities of gothic horror, and then Children of the Stones, sort of goes the sci-fi route, using the black hole and the atomic clock and all that stuff. So sort of an interesting take.
Yeah, so like science fiction and folk horror, isn't this sort of together? It's an interesting mishmash.
Mm-hmm. All blended together, in the end, very well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's successful. And, they stick the landing, don't they? Definitely, I think, on this. And it leaves you with so many sort of weird questions as to what will happen next.
But then there is no next, and you're just, yeah.
We're just left wondering.
It's going to be slightly different, isn't it? Because I'm slightly puzzled as to Matt and Adam's place in this kind of new Milbury that they wake up into, because Margaret and Sandra obviously know them really well, and so does Mrs. Crabtree. Yeah. What has their story been in that version of reality? And they then go and leave because they're not happy ones, are they? The Margaret and Mrs. Crabtree in that final scene. And in fact, the Magus hasn't arrived yet. He arrives as Matt and Adam are leaving. So I'm slightly puzzled to what's going on, and the fact that dye, this new dye, this knife sharpening dye knows who they are and doesn't like them. But what is their history within that version of events?
Mm-hmm.
Because then, they bail out of all that, and then presumably, the new Magus arrives, and then everything starts again, and perhaps 2 other visitors come, and presumably they break the circle at the end of this, and then the cycle starts again. It's quite a lot to get your head around, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I wonder how many, kids watching at the time sort of
even attempted to do that.
Well, got all of it. I mean, I don't want to disparage the intelligence of kids, because kids will pick up on stuff and get and understand stories and stuff like that. But I just wonder.
Well, I say I can't remember my exact reaction to it at the time, but that I'm pretty sure all of that would have gone over my head as a kid. But I used to watch Doctor Who like that. I didn't necessarily understand the plots, but there's enough kind of excitement on the screen, the weird stuff going on, that was enough. And I guess that would have been like that for most sort of younger kids watching this. Perhaps the older teenagers and stuff would get a better handle on what was going on.
Right.
Yeah, come to think of it, I think that's how I sort of watched Star Wars as a kid. Because as a kid, I would watch episode 4, 5, and 6 on loop, basically. Mm-hmm. And I do remember a point where I was like, okay, now this watching this, however many times it was, the 20th watching of this movie is okay. Now I understand the plot, what's actually happening. Before it was just sort of. Yeah, it was just sort of there.
That was me with Back to the Future. Though more so because that's an incredibly confusing movie if you don't know the plot.
Yeah, that could be very confusing. Just a couple of points from listening to your previous episodes. I haven't heard 6 yet, but I've heard all the other
6 hasn't
5.
gone out
but
yet.
Yeah, that'll be why. Peek behind the curtain. Just to think about the school. Schools are not like that, and they weren't like that in the 1970s, unless you were a very tiny village. In which case, you just stick some kids together wherever you had space to put them. The government is probably not going to, stump up for a school for, a handful of kids. So, they're just probably in a building that's used for something else. So that's why it doesn't look anything like a proper classroom. And that's why you've got kids of different ages in there as well. There's such a tiny catchment area for kids, that you'll have quite a variance of ages in there, all kind of learning things sort of simultaneously. And the other thing is the pubs are not that empty. Any sort of British person watching this will think, blimey, why is that pub so empty? Especially in high summer. In Avebury itself, in high summer, I know from experience last summer that, if you don't get there early enough, you will not be able to park anywhere.
Joy.
It's full of tourists. All wanting to see the Stones and stuff, and all using the pub, and there's another restaurant somewhere else in there. So this is that's not normal pub life for a village. A pub in a village is like the hub. People will go there pretty much every day, particularly in the 70s. So for a pub to be that empty is unusual, and that's that's alarm bells ring. If you see pubs that empty, because we're a nation of drinkers.
But my question is, why are all the parents letting the kids hang out with Di? Still, not quite sure I'm sold on that one.
Navajo Birdsong on Twitter responded, and she said, her sort of account was, that's just how it was back then. It's just nobody really thought anything of it in a small village, and in the 70s, it was just kind of happened.
Yeah, that's true. That's true from what I remember of it. All the anything weird that happened, would get hushed up, wrongly, but that's what would happen. So yeah, you would get. It feels odd. It feels very odd now, doesn't it? Him just letting die into the house and eat all the food and just sort of hanging out with them just feels so incredibly weird now. But I can kind of imagine that happening because I don't think kids were so scared of adults back then. I don't think kids didn't really know what could go wrong. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So back then, perhaps watching it, I don't remember well enough, but perhaps watching it then, that probably wouldn't have felt that weird. Although I probably wouldn't have wanted to invite him in, but I could see how somebody might do that. Whereas now it just looks so far off what anyone would do. That's one of the things that dates us apart from the fantastic clothing.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of it's a good time to jump into our costumes of the 70s section. I didn't notice any 70s, specific attire in this episode, really, that we hadn't seen before, at least.
No, it's not as bad as some. I do like a couple of episodes back. Was it 5 and 6? You've got Margaret the historian, who appears to be wearing a tapestry for going out to a meal. You can't get much more 70s than that, does it?
Except for Matthew's bell bottoms that he wears every week.
And his incredibly short jackets.
And incredibly small shirts.
His crop tops.
Yeah, tiny shirts, bell-bottom flares and short jackets. I'm pretty sure I had hair like that when I would have been watching this with hair like that. That's how it was back then.
You were like, Matthew, you're my spirit animal. Hey, Mom, can I have some bell-bottoms? Mom was like, you're going to regret that when you grow older, Jim.
Can I have a disgusting dressing gown, please? What was that bathrobe thing that he was wearing? That was absolutely horrible.
I'm still a fan of Hendricks' olive green tailored suit last week on episode 6.
Whoa. Stylish.
He
looks even worse, doesn't he? It's Joshua Litton, with that slick back hair and that sort of horrible 70s business suit.
Oh, jeez. What a time. The 70s. What a time. What a time.
Coming from someone who was not alive at the time.
Exactly. Coming from someone whose experience in the 70s is watching everything else from the 70s. What a time.
It was the decade that taste forgot, unfortunately.
Well, I don't know if we want to do some sort of final thoughts here or just kind of an overview.
Yeah, talk about the season and whatever we want to talk about. I know Jim said he wanted to talk about names.
Yeah, do you want to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay. I did a bit of research in it. So, it occurred to me when I was watching this, Matthew and Adam are the breaks, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And they break the circle at the end of the story. Adam is, whether you believe this stuff or not, is the first man on Earth. Crabtree, Mrs. Crabtree, the Crabtree is also called, Crabtree is another name for the crabapple tree. Mm-hmm. The apple, is she tempting Adam into the circle that is the village? Bear with me. On to Matthew. Matthew means gift from God in Hebrew, which doesn't necessarily work here. But he's one of the 4 evangelists in the Bible who convert people to Christianity, perhaps away from paganism. Yeah. Which is what is being practiced in the village at the moment. Mm-hmm. So Raphael Hendrick. Raphael means God has healed, and Hendrik is comes from the Dutch, meaning ruler of the estate. He rules the estate, and he has been healed by this beam and is trying to heal others. His second incarnation, Joshua Litton. Joshua comes from the Hebrew word to save, and Litton means settlement on a hill. So is he saving this settlement on a hill? Link is the one sort of, one of the constants in this. He seems to be the one who beckons in the different magi in each of the cycles. He is a link. And slightly, even more tenuous, Di. It means beloved in Welsh, which probably doesn't help us here. But the name Di obviously makes you think of death. And he is the kind of barber surgeon who is killed in each of these cycles because he threatens the circle.
Because he dies.
So I think he does. Yeah, I think there's too much here there must be some deliberate naming here. There's too much sort of coincidence, I think, otherwise. So I think they took a bit of care when they chose the names for this.
Definitely.
What do you think? Load of old nonsense or not?
Well, a lot of it is very, I would say, a lot probably deliberate, probably did their homework there. Very on the nose for a lot of these, so.
But not too on the nose, because we didn't pick up on any of it except for Di.
No, yeah.
So it couldn't have been that on the nose. I do think it was deliberate as well. I mean, it's too many to be a coincidence.
I think so, yeah. So I think they sat around a table and decided on these names quite deliberately. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's that.
Very interesting. Like how most fantasy from like pre-2000s was heavily steeped in Christian folklore. Looking at you, C.S. Lewis. Looking at you.
Well, that's sort of a...
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say, like, C.S. Lewis is sort of, an outlier there. It's like, oh, okay, so the lion is Jesus. Like, all right, got it. On to the next story.
Hello, Star Wars. With Space Jesus and Anakin and his Space Jesusness.
Well, not to mention all the other, bits of Far Eastern folklore that George Lucas appropriated for that story.
Well, it's the Hidden Fortress, isn't it? Is the Japanese film, isn't it? That A New Hope is quite heavily based on, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So presumably that has some sort of Far East folklore in that.
Well, I kind of just wanted to maybe sort of end off here by saying, like, I really enjoyed this show. I think of the two shows we've watched so far on this podcast, I think this is the stronger one.
I prefer Star Cops.
So they're almost, in a way, like structurally mirrors of each other, because Star Cops started out very strong and then sort of just fizzled out. This one kind of
started as a fizzle.
Like, okay, like, let's see where this goes, but ended on a very strong note, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know Star Cops for real. I have it, but I've only watched the first couple of episodes, so I haven't watched that or listened to your podcast yet, but I will do. But I mean, for my part, this is something I vaguely remembered for when I was a kid, and I watched it a while back. I don't know if I saw a VHS of it some time ago, on videotape a while back. And then I bought the DVD a few years ago, and I watched it again. I thought, yeah, this is good. And then I watched it again because I knew I was coming on this, and I thought, no, this is really good. And it's one of my favourite programs now. I think they've done an absolutely cracking job on this.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
You weren't drawn in by the last episode and
not really.
You don't seem happy enough to me, Dylan.
Why don't you come over for dinner tonight, Dylan?
Well, I don't know. I've seen
some prawns and avocado. Yeah. That's what that meal was, by the way. You were trying to work out what it was, weren't you?
Oh yes. Oh
yes. It's a horrible dish, a horrible 70s dish over here called avocado prawn, which is an avocado with some prawns in it. and a salad.
God, the
So that's
70s were
what they.
weird.
Yeah, they were. So that's what they were eating.
I don't know. I've seen the whole like time loop, things are being repeated again and again thing done before, after this, obviously, temporally, but in my opinion, done better. But even just beyond that, restricting it to just this show, I felt like it was too middling in the middle for me to be like, yeah, that was good. Like there were too many things that happened in the middle that were just clearly filler to fill out those episodes. Like the pacing of the whole series was off. I feel like maybe I would have enjoyed it more if it was just cut together into like a 2-hour movie or something.
I would say so. I would say definitely. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, that probably worked better.
And I don't know, just like the first couple of episodes, I thought there were a couple of things that I was really interested in. And then like you don't really find anything out more about those things that I was interested in until like a couple episodes later, which is again probably would not be a big problem if it was a movie and you watch it all in one sitting, but having to go an entire week and then nothing about any of the cool stuff I was actually interested in comes up, and then I'm like, okay, I guess I'll wait another week. Like,
is that how you watched it? You watched it week by week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I watched it all in one sitting the latest time, and I didn't notice any dip in the middle because I was doing it in one blast, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can imagine it's only 25 minutes. It's, if you're looking forward to the next 25 minutes of Children of the Stones and not much happens, then you're going to feel a bit cheated for a whole week, aren't you? So yeah, my experience is different to that, but I can see why yours was how it was.
And I think I believe there's someone who has edited all of this into a single long run and put it on YouTube. I haven't, I didn't scrub through the video or anything, but I would hope that they would, or I hope that they took out all the recap so we don't have back to back just the same two scenes done 4 times at least.
That's a fantastic moment, isn't there? When they put those. You were trying to work out why they said the end of part 1 and part 2, weren't you? Right at the beginning of the podcast. Yeah, that's how it was and still is in this country, I think, in terms of stuff on the commercial channels, because you stick an ad break in and you put something up to show that part's finished and another one up to say the next part has started. But the thing is, I don't know, I watched this from the DVD. I'm guessing you watched it from an online streaming service that probably rhymes with new lube. I'm guessing. But I don't know if they had all these bumpers, which are the bits they film to go into an ad break and then come out of it the other end. But there's one fantastic one. Is it Kevin? Is the boy that has a fight with Matt, doesn't he? And then gets sort of turned, doesn't he? Turns to a happy one. Mm-hmm. And then so at the end of one of the episodes, he's just pulling this. I think you said he was sort of blissed out, didn't you?
Yes.
That's a fantastic bit where he's just staring with a slightly weird expression, and then he's holding on and holding on and holding on, and he looks at the camera, doesn't he? And then looks back again. Is that bit on YouTube or not?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember it distinctly. Yeah. It was one of the greatest moments.
Because they film these bits, so whoever's broadcasting can just like stick the adverts in whenever they like at that point, the commercials, and at whatever point. So they film slightly too much, just so it gives people, I guess, enough sort of wriggle room for whatever commercials are trying to show in the break. So you probably would not have seen that on transmission. But that's hilarious seeing it now.
You're seeing the true director's vision on DVD with Kevin looking spaced out for 30 seconds.
Director's cut.
And then looking at the viewer towards the director's cut. That's what he wanted.
Children of the Stones, as Peter Graham Scott intended.
The George Lucas cut of Children of the Stones. I really couldn't achieve my vision with the limitations of adverts at the time, so on the DVD transmission, I kept the full bumper.
Yeah, but then the adults are slightly better at doing it, aren't they? Ian Cuthbertson will just hold his gaze, without even blinking during that whole bumper. But some of the others look slightly less comfortable, particularly the kids. So that is it's an unintentional laugh. That bit. I found that very funny when that came.
Yeah, Kevin.
Do we want to talk about?
No, I was just saying Kevin looks spaced out of his mind the entire series, but that's neither here nor there.
A lot of kids looked like that in the 70s. that first kid that goes on the bike ride with Matt. He's got a Liverpool accent, which is quite odd. Yeah, Liverpoolian accent. Why has he got Liverpoolian accent if he lives there in the southwest of England? But he must have moved.
Did he move into the circle? Is he not part of the original plan? Oh God, the questions.
Yes, he was walking down a Liverpool street and then suddenly received some sort of psychic signal and he walked all the way.
He's the rogue factor. He was never accounted for.
He ruined everything. But there's no child on British TV who's looked more 70s than he does in this.
So maybe that's why his name is Bob, is because he has a bob. Whoa! Yes. Talk about names.
None of this has been left to chance.
Bob, you menace.
Plan. Do you want to talk about the main actors?
Yeah, let's do that for a bit. So we wrap.
Gareth Thomas. This is the year before he becomes Roger Blake out of Blake 7. He manages to look a lot older in this, don't you think, than he does in Blake 7. Even though it's prior to Blake 7. I think the parting his hair like that and the sideburns and what he's wearing just makes him look a lot older than he does as Blake.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely in the costume design and makeup design, I should say.
Maybe it's the fact that he's playing a father, whereas Blake.
Yeah, he's got a son knocking around. Yeah, that could be part of it, couldn't it? But I thought he's great in it. He's really good.
Yeah, he and Ian Cuthbertson are fantastic in this, and obviously the two sort of biggest actors in this show, so kind of what you would expect. I think it's the kids where it's sort of either hit or miss. Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, if you like the character that Ian Cuthbertson plays in this, M.R. James, that sort of ghost story writer, British ghost story writer.
Vaguely, that's familiar.
All right. Well, there's an adaptation of one of his stories, Casting the Runes, that ITV made in 1979. Ian Cuthbertson plays a very similar character in that. It's on YouTube, so give it a look. It's not a lot of M.R. James purists don't like it. I quite enjoy it, but Ian Cuthbertson does another really magnetic performance in that, and it's very similar to what he's doing here as Hendrik. So it's like an unrelated sequel, if you see what I mean.
A spiritual successor.
That's better. Spiritual successor to Children of the Stone. So look that one out. Yeah, but he's brilliant though, isn't he? He was, his sheer height and sort of actorly presence is exactly what's required, isn't it? And apparently the writers were really pleased that he was cast. He was exactly what their vision of this character was. So that's good.
I think the guy who plays Matthew does a pretty good job as well.
Yeah, and sadly I can't remember his name. Because he has a very short acting career.
Peter Deming,
right?
Which I always thought was Peter Denim for ages. The M and the N the other way around. Speaking of M and N's being the other way around, have you noticed he always says something instead of something? I noticed it once, and I couldn't unnotice it for the rest of the story, unfortunately.
Maybe that's why his acting career was so short.
Yeah, dismal display of M and N usage.
He goes on to play I know we mentioned this, I think, in episode 1, but he goes on to play a young Robin Hood in something, I think it's just called The Adventures of Young Robin Hood in the early 80s, I think.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of that, which is odd because I know most of the stuff came out around then. I'd like to track that down, actually. I think he's pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
And the relationship that they have, as characters, the relationship that they have is, as father and son is really good. And I don't think you really see that in many sort of TV serials, do you? This kind of, because they joke around with each other, and they have the odd sort of choice remark at each other, don't they? But they get along really well.
Yeah, their chemistry is great.
Yeah, the chemistry as characters and as actors, I think, works really well, and it really sort of binds the whole thing together, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I mean, if the Matthew Adam dynamic doesn't work, then so much of this show also doesn't work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and they've got that. The casting is brilliant, isn't it, for this? Yeah, good stuff. Freddie Jones specialised in very creepy parts. In the sort of 70s and 80s, I can't remember seeing anything he was in that he wasn't playing someone really weird.
and that's Die?
So,
it's Freddie Jones?
Yeah, that's Die,
gotcha.
Sorry. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, Freddie Jones. That was his delivery in most of the things I've seen him in. He's slightly toned down, actually, as Die, I think. But he's the father of Toby Jones, who played the Dream Lord in Doctor Who, Amy's Choice.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, Toby Jones is a very successful actor now, isn't he?
Yes.
Freddie Jones died very recently, unfortunately, so that's a shame. But he's excellent in this in sort of both iterations. We get a slightly different one towards the end, don't we? But he's good. But he has an air of weirdness, which means that most normal people wouldn't.
Everything of weirdness.
Most people wouldn't invite him into their houses, I think. but yeah. So he's a barber surgeon, isn't he, the character? Which is like a weird, like Middle Ages job, where you'd do bloodletting and sort of minor dentistry, you'd pull teeth and stuff, sort of very minor surgery, I suppose. Cupping stuff, where you place cups on people. The suction is supposed to, heal you in various areas. But they do that kind of stuff in peacetime. But they'd go out with armies and they'd sort of look after soldiers during and after battles. So that was their kind of job. So yeah, I suppose knife sharpening kind of fits in that. It's kind of adjacent to being a barber surgeon, isn't it? Having some sharp knives.
Just having some sharp knives.
Or you could be a chef, maybe, or a serial killer.
Yes, the two ends of the spectrum.
I'm sure the two coincide occasionally. Serial killing chefs. I'm sure it's happened.
Serial killing barber. Sweeney Todd.
Yeah. Sweeney Todd, for instance. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Well,
I unfortunately don't remember any of the other actors.
Well,
yeah, I
we
didn't
sort
have
of
much to say
covered
about those.
most of them broadly. We have the adults and we have the kids, and that's sort of just.
And that's that. Wow. Great.
Yeah, I think Sandra's pretty good, isn't she? Bob's all right. Kevin's all right.
Bob's all right. Link.
The one Link. He's all right. He's always good, isn't he?
I think Link was played by John Woodnut, was it? And he has
John Woodnut.
more.
The guy with more acting credits than everybody else in the show.
Yeah, he has the most extensive career. More credits than Ian Cuthbertson. More credits than Gareth Thomas, I believe.
Well, what about the both of them combined?
Probably not. But
he's been Doctor Who a lot, hasn't
he? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
He played Rassilon in the Five Doctors.
And I think that was the Doctor. The Doctor in this played Rassilon, didn't he?
Oh right, yeah,
The Doctor
sorry,
who goes away. Yeah. No, he played Broton the Zygon in Terror of the Zygons, and
yes.
he was Hibbert in Spearhead from Space.
Yes, Hibbert.
That weird,
love that guy.
Sweaty bloke. We've got a new policy. Yeah, he played him.
Broton,
and
best Zygon.
Broton for the win. Yeah, so he was a very familiar face in the 70s. But but the kids, child acting has changed quite a lot, I think. You get the feeling that sometimes Peter Devon is like charging to the end of his sentence, isn't he, to get all the facts out rather than really kind of saying them as you would say them if they were occurring to you at the time. But he's still pretty good. But I mean, child acting has it's rocketed in quality since the 70s, I think.
I think he just went to the Paul Darrow acting school.
It now closed down, of course.
Well, I'm just about out of things to say about Children of the Stones, actually.
So I am. I'm same here. I just am out of things to say.
Yeah, me too. I think all I would say is that it's considered. It's often considered the scariest program for kids that's ever been made in this country. I'm not sure that's completely true. I think that there's parts of Doctor Who that's scarier than this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly weird, but then there's a lot of weird stuff in the 70s aimed at kids. But I mean, I'm not sure it's necessarily a kids program. I think it's more like a family program like Doctor Who's, because I think you get a lot of this as an adult, and there's some quite tricky concepts, and particularly when in part 7 when they're going on about all that all the stuff about the black hole and trying to intervene with the clocks and stuff. There's some quite difficult stuff to think about in there. So I wouldn't consider it a straight kids program. And I think the 12 certificate on the DVD sort of shows that it's not really one for the younger kids.
I would agree. I think it's more of a family program than a kids program. I think this kind of ties back to earlier when we were saying, I don't know if I would understand this if I was watching this as a kid. And I definitely think it's one of those things like you watch an animated movie that you enjoyed as a kid, as an adult, and all of a sudden all the jokes that you didn't get as a kid make sense. But also you realize the plot is way more complex and nuanced than as a kid. And I think that kind of the same thing happens here between if you watch it as a kid and if you watch it as an adult, you kind of pick different things out of it. But that might be true for any kids program as well. But
yeah, I suppose so. But I think it has a few layers. I mean, you could kind of watch this and the sort of life that they have in the village is, it's a bit like the Wicker Man, the original sort of 73 one, not the Nick Cage thing, the original 1973 one. I mean, that's the lifestyle is sort of quite seductive in some ways, isn't it? And when you got these people who are very happy. I'm not quite sure why they're so good at mathematics. I'm not sure that's ever made clear, is it?
It's probably...
it just seems a byproduct of being cleansed of evil or something.
Might have something to do with the whole bear called bear meaning maths and old Gaelic thing, but...
Yeah, it might do. You never know. That seemed like a bit of a throwaway remark that didn't go down very well in the final episode. But but obviously the problem is that they don't have free will, isn't it? And you have to be allowed to make mistakes and do things that aren't objectively good, don't you? And that's what Adam is sort of railing against, isn't he? The lack of free will here. But at the same time, you can kind of look at what Hendrik is doing and think, is that really a really bad thing he's doing or not? I mean, he's got a village of very happy people, and there probably weren't many of those in the 1970s in Britain. So, I mean, that is something. When the other things I'm not quite sure is there's the idea that he's supposed to sort of take on all this evil, isn't he? And like some kind of burden. And you certainly see him look exhausted after the thing with Matt and Adam, but that hasn't actually happened at that point. So why is he looking exhausted at the end of it? So that's slightly odd. But it seems to me that the beam goes upwards, and they quite clearly make the beam go up out of the table and into the sky, don't they?
Yes.
It's not a case of it coming from above and down into the table, so they'd be very careful about that. I'm not quite sure what part he has to play in that. Surely, the evil just gets sucked out of that big sort of stone circle underneath the village. I'm not sure where he fits in to that, apart from sort of summoning the forces and getting the timing exactly right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure personally. When they talk about the supernova becoming a black hole, reversing the flow of everything, you're kind of left wondering, does that mean the original priest was making everybody sad? Was he injecting evil into everybody instead of taking their evil away? Giving them sadness instead of taking it away? We don't know. So
it's hard to tell, but there's a lot of unanswered questions, but that's kind of part of the appeal, I think, as well. It makes you think at the end of this, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
You can't imagine what the next cycle is going to be like. Because it's a different player. The major player is different, isn't he? He looks like some politician or something, doesn't he? Retiring into the village. So he himself is a newcomer. Where you didn't get the impression that Hendrik was a newcomer, did you? I can't remember.
He was the one who discovered the black hole, and then he just quit astronomy and retired to the village
to do more astronomy.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so that obviously that makes sense actually, because that keeps happening within the circle. But that sort of major character is going to be slightly different each time, and presumably has slightly different motivations for what he's doing. Because this guy is not going to discover a black hole, presumably, unless he changes, his interests from what we appear to see from him when he turns up. So everything's going to be a bit different, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too that you kind of see, the progression of history, because this is a loop, but it's also advancing at the normal rate of time or whatever. So maybe in past iterations, things were more mystical, and we maybe understood more about what the priest, or maybe if we had seen, past loops, we would have understood more about what the priest was really doing, what his goals were, and sort of got more of the religious side of this. Whereas this loop, which occurs in the 70s, we're advancing more into the scientific aspects of it. We learn about the black hole, and they use the atomic clocks to break out, which just kind of makes you think as this sort of continues. What exactly is going to be the focus of this loop and the people in it? So that's kind of something interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's a good point, because whoever the Magus is can only use what he has at his disposal. Of course, a couple of cycles back, there wouldn't have any computers that could do that kind of stuff, or even one cycle back. So he's approaching the issue from a different angle to any of the previous cycles. And who knows what will happen in future cycles?
Who knows what's happening in the cycle happening right now?
Yeah. No, I think it's terrific. I think it's thought provoking, and just a cracking piece of drama. Obviously, it's got the slight drawbacks from it being made in the 70s, but it's not special effects heavy, is it? The special effects they use still tell the story quite well now. I think I grow to like it more and more every time I watch it.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and I mean, I would definitely agree with that too. It's this is the second time I'm watching it, and you definitely pick up on all the little hints and clues that they drop from episodes 1 through 5, essentially, and they kind of reveal what's going on in 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's quite well plotted in that way, isn't it?
Yeah. I just love it. it's part of that for me also. I know I mentioned this on an earlier episode too. Part of that for me is that I used to read the Goosebumps book series as a kid, and this is the type of story that those books, tell. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were pre-prepared for this kind of story then?
Yeah. Or just kind of, brought me back to that time of reading these, being a kid and reading these stories of kids getting to this weird supernatural stuff. So it's all good.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, because it's very sort of kid-centric, isn't it? Apparently they filmed most of it in the school holidays. We have now and back then we have about 6 or 7 weeks holiday in the summer for off school, as kids of that age. So because of their schooling and all the rest of it, they filmed most of it during their holidays. So that was really high summer, in one of the best summers this country has ever seen. So it's nice to have that captured on the screen and then played back in January and February the next year, where you could do with the sun. Yeah, you can do with sunshine wherever you can find it, even if that's on your TV screen. So good timing all around, I think, for that.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have got rained off very often. Occasionally, it gets a bit overcast, doesn't it, in some of the scenes? But if you're going to film something with this amount of exterior location work on it, 1976 is probably the best year you could have chosen in Britain to do that. So it's nice to have that documented in a slightly different way.
Yeah, well, and that's all you guys wanted to touch on. I'm pretty much out. I've exhausted everything I've had to say.
Yeah, I think I've exhausted everything. Well, I guess that leads us into the end of the episode then. I guess, Jim, if you want to plug yourself and your various projects that you've got going on, where people can find you and listen to more of your dulcet tones.
Well, I only really have one project these days, and that is the Krynoid podcast. That's Krynoid, Krynoid podcast. It's a monthly podcast about classic Doctor Who. So before the comeback in 2005. Lengthy reviews of each of the stories. We intend to cover all of them, which is going to take us to summer 2023, I believe.
Nice. Still got 3 years of content planned. Heck yeah.
Yeah, we'll be going for 10 years, and we got another 3 years.
Nice. Very nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's commitment or insanity for you. But yeah, so if you're interested in classic Doctor Who, then please look us up.
Yeah. Highly recommend Krynoid podcast. I'll throw my recommendation in the hat.
Likewise.
In the ring.
God bless you, the pair of you. Thank you.
Well, if there's anyone out there who'd like to find us, as usual, you can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Children of the Stones. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And thanks again, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you for being on, Jim.
Thanks very much for having me. A pleasure as always.
Always a good time. You're the first guest on Inevitable, so you can wear that badge forever. No one can take that away from you.
I might make a t-shirt.
But I guess we should probably announce what we're going to be doing next for this podcast. So
Probably.
We have another podcast called Triple Play, a movie trilogy podcast, where we sort of review and detail the making of movie trilogies. So that's what's next for us.
There's 6 episodes of that that'll go out probably weekly, maybe bi-weekly, depending on how long of a hiatus we want to take between seasons of Inevitable.
Right. But after the next season of that is over, we'll be back with Inevitable, and we'll be watching Sapphire and Steel. We've decided.
Hey!
Had a few recommendations. A few people recommend Sapphire and Steel.
We poured over the ancient sacred texts to decide what to watch next for multiple days. And then we were like, Sapphire Steel.
Which looks like a very interesting show. I've watched like 10 minutes of it.
I've watched none of it.
Yes, it's quite a weird one. I mean, it's very spooky and very weird. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you both make of it.
Perhaps you can come back, Jim.
Yeah.
You never know. I know very little about it. I watched some of it when it came out, and as usual, I've got the DVDs, but I haven't got around to watching them yet.
Well, now you have a reason.
Now I have a reason, yeah. So I'm going to watch them along with you, so that'll be fun.
All right.
Cool. So looking forward to that. But until then, the end.